Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kerr. At the time of this recording, the Oscars have just taken place, and Jack Mahanes is back to join me in recapping them. So, Jack, are you ready to begin?
Definitely, there's a lot we have to talk about with what happened last night. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of stuff was predictable, but excuse me, sorry, just getting over this cough from a cold I had about a week ago. But yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack with this, and should be fun.
Well, yes. In fact, many people were agreeing with, majority were predicting, which, whenever I see that, I'm like, well, that can't be good. There's got to be a surprise somewhere. But then again, every once in a while, we get a year where there arguably wasn't really any big surprises. And yeah, this was mostly a predictable year. As you and I were both texting earlier, we both got 20 out of 24 correct. So, hey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were some surprises. And I think that the surprises just kind of pointed us in a direction of like what was ultimately going to win Best Picture. Because a lot of people, thought this was a two-person race, and maybe it was fairly close, maybe closer in the end, but yeah, there was especially one surprise early in the night when I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Well, let's discuss some categories at least one of us got wrong, starting with what was the first award of the night, Best Supporting Actress. When you and I last spoke, we both had Wunmi Misaku winning, but also attempted to switch to Amy Madigan. You ended up doing so while I stuck with the former, partially because I didn't want to copy your predictions, and in the end, you did the right thing.
Yes. So as we discussed, I was in contact with my very good friend Tarek Khan, and he said that just like at SAG, his Academy polling was overwhelming for Amy Madigan. Like I'm talking like no one was close. And then I also was in contact with my Facebook friend. I don't talk to him a whole lot, but I'm Facebook friends with this a famous voice teacher for actors. His name's Bob Garrett. And I remember Bob told me many, many years ago that it was after the Oscar nominations early 2021 that the majority of the voters he knew were going for Andrew Day for Best Actress. But just out of curiosity, just because I was given after what Tarek said, I messaged him as well, and I just said, "Hey, remember when you told me this many years ago? Are are your friends, most of them going for Amy Madigan?" And he said, the great majority of them are. So when I kept hearing, and never rely on the anonymous ballots, to make my predictions, especially after what happened. We like a lot of us, including myself, fell for the Penelope Cruz parallel mothers thing. But Amy Madigan winning SAG when Sinners had a great night and Masaku couldn't even, be a part of that, by that winning haul that night. So it was that, that win happened right as final voting was happening. It was clear that there was a lot of passion for that performance with Amy Madigan. And then the other thing that I really factored in was that Matt Neglia, and I was very surprised to hear this. He did a Twitter space, and one of the things he said that made me go, okay, she really could overcome the major stat hurdles working against her. Was he said that she was getting a lot of love from younger voters, which in my opinion, that was who was primarily. I thought that they were like the ones that were primarily driving her bid to potentially go all the way. But Matt Neglia said that she was also garnering support from a lot of older Academy members too. So the fact that the older guard and the newer guard were kind of on the same page with this, and I thought, Tiana Taylor and William Saku, they clearly have support, but they're getting support mostly from people who are like wanting to go all in on one battle or go all in on Sinners. But also, when reading those ballots, this was the last major things that jumped out at me was there were a lot of voters who were either going very Sinners heavy or very one battle heavy, but they were still voting for Amy Madigan. So between all of that, between what Tarek was saying, what Bob Garrett was saying, Matt Neglia, Kyle Buchanan, by Friday night, I was just like, you know what? I can't deny this anymore. And what I mean by deny, like I'll be honest, I would have absolutely voted for Amy Madigan myself, but I just was very, very hesitant to go there because of the stat hurdle of being a low nominee. She didn't sweep and she missed out at BAFTA. So all that made me very, very hesitant. But finally, it was just Friday, it was just all right in front of me. And I was just like, yeah, no, 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 she's gonna win.
And you know, something I thought about, if this was before the Kirsten Dunst rule was implemented, we'd be going on about how many Academy members even bothered watching Weapons, especially given that it has no other nominations. Yes, since it was, I think it may have appeared to have helped Madigan in this case.
Yes, and also Weapons was a big box office hit last summer, so it was a widely seen film. I mean, I don't think really a lot of people were saying that a lot of the other elements of the film were quote unquote Oscar caliber, but it's just her performance was just I think just too good for for voters to pass up on. But I do think you know Ed Harris is a four-time Oscar loser, but he now finally has an Oscar in his house, even though that Oscar will belong to his wife.
Well, I mean, as someone who was personally in the middle on weapons as a whole, I didn't find anything Oscar caliber about that. I mean, you might as well consider me to be an older Academy member who just doesn't take roles like that seriously.
Yeah, but it's cool when they make these kind of very out of the box, not your typical Oscar film choices, like Ruth Gordon winning for Rosemary's Baby. It's just so cool when like you get these types of winners. And I mean, I think Tiana Taylor would have been worthy of the win. William Saku, maybe not as much in my opinion. Um, but to me, like I was kind of really hoping for Amy Madigan in that final stretch. And when Zoe Saldana read her name, I just went, yes. Like not just like I like because I got it right, but it was just like, yes, like, this she had so much working against her, but she won this and she earned it. And I would I would have to really maybe I have to go back and watch Minari or West Side Story, but I would almost go as far to say Amy Madigan might be the best supporting actress winner we've had this decade.
Well, I strongly disagree with that. I mean, I personally think Mannequin down at the bottom of her lineup, and I personally have not agreed with the Best Supporting Actress win since Yajin Yun for Minari way back in 2020. And no disrespect to every single winner since then, but I've continued to find the overall roster to be mostly underwhelming.
Yeah, it seems that, this decade, I mean, Yo Chung Yoon seems to be a very consensus pick overall. Like, I don't think that there's anyone who doesn't love that win. Ariana Bose has like, some passionate supporters, some who just think the win is just kind of, whatever. Jamie Lee's win is panned mostly overall.
Much to
Did
Tarek Khan's dismay.
Yeah, no, no, he's the biggest Jamie Lee Curtis fan in the world. So it made sense why he was really pulling for her. But yeah, I think aside from him and myself, like I'm not as hard on it, but it's also not great on perform a great win on performance alone either. And then Randolph, I just think that that's one that like a lot of people love, but then there are people like you, me, and Tarek who just are kind of like, really? Like that performance went all the way? And then Zoe Saldana. I mean, I think if Amelia Perez was a better movie, I think her win would not be as frowned upon. Um, but but yeah, no, but because of the movies she's in, I think a lot of people really don't like the fact that Zoe Saldana, even though they said she was the best part about it, that she was able to win.
Well, as someone who tends to have, well, old-fashioned tastes, I don't, I just don't care if a win is out the, if it's cool to see an outbox win or not. The most I care about is the quality of the work.
Absolutely, but I think the quality of the work with Amy Madigan was incredible. I mean, especially like I mean the scene that I think of that kind of sealed the win for me was the whole scene with her and the young child, her nephew, where she's like, I can make your parents hurt themselves. I can make them even eat each other if I wanted to. If you break your promise, Alex, I'll know. Like just the way that she just delivered it was so subtle, but it was terrifying. And so that was the scene for me that was like, okay, you get my vote regardless of what actually happens at the Oscars.
Well, she was clear never getting my vote, but moving on to what was arguably one of the very few surprises of the night, which was kind of a big one. Okay, best casting. We were both pretty much agreeing with the consensus that the inaugural winner was going to be Sinners, but instead, it ended up being the first win of the night for one battle after another.
Yes. And that to me, I felt that that was game set match for best picture. I mean, I didn't know how much of like the quote unquote center surge was real. I couldn't tell if that was just noise or if that was just or if it was actually happening. Like how Parasite was continuing just to build momentum. Um, throughout the season, even though it lost Peachy and DTA, that SAG Ensemble win was huge for it. And so a lot of people thought that SAG Ensemble win was huge for Sinners. And that was what primarily led me to settle on Sinners for casting. But then when Gwyneth Paltrow opened an envelope and revealed one battle after another was the winner, I was like, I don't think Sinners can win Best Picture after it lost that.
Yeah, a lot of people were mentioning that on Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, there was another surprise that night that made people think that, the race is still on. I know we're going to get to that in a little bit, but I'll explain why I didn't go there, or why I wasn't worried, at least.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of winners we'll get in this category moving forward. Whether or not still just default to the Best Picture frontrunner.
Yeah, maybe, but I like that this category has been introduced because I do think casting directors, they do have a very very tough job because casting is important in terms of picking the right people, for the right roles, the people who they feel will be the most authentic version of those characters. And I just think that this category, I'm glad that BAFTA's been doing it for so long. No, sorry, not so long, since the beginning of this decade. I think it was about time that this category was introduced at the Oscars.
Oh yeah, and I bet the casting of Chase Infinity in one battle after another must have sealed the deal for them.
Yes.
Now, even though we've skipped the short categories the last couple of years, I do want to bring up this one real quick, because for the first time since Skyfall and Zero Dark 30 both won Best Sound Editing in 2012, we had a tie, which, as Mark Wahlberg said that year, no BS, we have a tie.
And even Kamel Nanjiani did like a version. He's like, "I'm not kidding you guys. I'm not lying. It's this is a tie. We have a tie."
The one last category, which was another surprise, which was okay. In Best Cinematography, given how one battle after another swept all the industry precursor prizes, it appeared to have been a near lock for the Oscar. Yet, despite winning nothing, Sinners not only managed to pull through, but Autumn Durwald Arkapaw has become the very first woman and woman of color to have ever won Best Cinematography.
Before I call on this, there's actually one other thing I did want to say about live action short and the tie. Someone pointed out on Twitter that the two times we've had a tie since Best Actress 1968 with Katharine Hepburn and Barbara Streisand was there because Barbara Streisand performed at the early 2013 Oscars, and then she also appeared in the she led the tribute to Robert Redford.
Hmm.
So I just thought that was so funny that Barbara Streisand, they were like Barbara Streisand has to be there in order for there to be a tie. So I thought that was funny. But anyway, with cinematography, yes, Tarek did tell me, when we compared notes Friday night, which what finally made me make the switch to Amy Madigan. I did not make the switch when he told me that one of his sources told him that Sinners was going to win cinematography because it had won the three major cinematography guild awards. The American Cinematographers, British Cinematographers, and BAFTA. So yeah, I thought it swept the industry precursors. So I was just like, I Though I just don't think that Sinners is going to win this. But it did. And it did make a couple of my friends very nervous because they pointed out that the last film that lost cinematography, sorry, that won cinematography and screenplay and did not go on to win the Oscar was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Mhm.
But I just mentioned, like, guys, that casting win I think was more of a crucial win for the top two Best Picture frontrunners. And of course, I said to him, look, if Paul Thomas Anderson lost director, then we could have, then I think hit the panic button. But my buddy Chris Sang, when I told him that, like, hey, some of my friends are getting nervous about Best Picture after cinematography, they're like, oh, Jack, tell them to stop being gullible. And so, because like, look, I wasn't gullible either. I mean, I knew Sinners, was in with a chance, but I knew that the cinematography win for Sinners was not going to change what was likely going to happen the rest of the night. With director and picture.
Yeah, and as our friend Matthew Anderson pointed out in his recap, he mentioned how this was the first time since 2011 where the Best Cinematography winner managed to pull through at the Oscars despite winning none of the major precursors, and that year it was Hugo.
Yes, and I think his friend Christian Hanna also pointed out that we also, you know, have gotten in recent years a tech surprise without winning a single precursor, like Dune for film editing, Anora for film editing, All Quiet on the Western Front for production design.
Mm.
Um, this year it was Sinners for cinematography. But
Yeah.
yeah, one of my friends did mention my awards group chat is he said that he thought that every winner was good or great, but the only two bad wins in his opinion were Michael B. Jordan for Best Actor and Sinners for cinematography.
Well, yeah, in fact, Matt Neglia mentioned how cinematographers he spoke with weren't fans of the work in Sinners, which is why he was doubtful it would win the ASC award. So it clearly didn't matter when it came to the entire Academy voting.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that the Academy as a whole, if this was like Emmy voting, like the branch picks its nominees and winners, maybe one battle was still won, or we could
Hmm.
have gotten a surprise like Train Dreams. But
Yes.
because the Academy as a whole was voting, I think that really helped Sinners.
Yeah, and previously, the names of the artists in all below the line categories didn't appear on the ballots. Yet this year, that was not the case, which makes me wonder if it might have actually helped Sinners.
Maybe. And I think, word had gotten out there that a woman has never won this category. Just like, word, Tom O'Neill, I think he and Paul Sheehan had mentioned that the word had gotten out um, the Shape of Water year that Roger Deakins had never won a cinematography Oscar, and it was, I don't even remember what number nomination, but it was definitely in the teens at that point. But yeah, it finally got out like Deakins has never won, and then I think that helped him uh, pull off that cinematography win for Blade Runner 2049.
And not to mention that the year before, when Hacksaw Ridge managed to pull a surprise win for Cinema's Best Sound Mixing over La La Land, some of the anonymous ballots mentioned that they voted for Hacksaw in that category because they knew Kevin O'Connell was one of the sound mixers and that he was long overdue. So pretty much word got out that he was the biggest loser in Oscar history at that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think oftentimes, media attention, to who's long overdue in the tech category, if they really, really get that word out there, it can help. Unless you're Diane Warren, but that's of course Diane Warren is, she's just right. I say this all the time. Diane Warren, if she writes a song for a top Best Picture contender, and it's a very popular song, she would be an Oscar winner. But she chooses to write for these movies that no one sees.
Well, hey, she at least has an honorary Oscar, so.
Yes, but did you see on the red carpet, Jeffrey? She was interviewed. She's like, "Who are you really rooting for tonight?" And she said, "Me."
Not sure if I did, so.
Yeah, no,
That's that.
I came across that on Twitter. I thought that was funny.
Well, now onto the show itself. What were your thoughts on the telecast as a whole?
I loved the stage design, although I think someone mentioned on Twitter that I kind of looked like an Asian owned spa. but I see what I see what they mean by that. I think that Conan is very funny. I thought that the opening bit with weapons was great. With him as Aunt Gladys, I thought that that was excellent. But I think that the jokes that were written for him overall just fell flat. It's not his fault. It's the writers that write the monologues for him. And I agree with Tariq Khan is that like the writers overall, I don't think that they've seen all the movies. So I think that their jokes are just very surface level. You know, sometimes they'll make the jokes a little political, which is fine. I don't mind political jokes at all. But I'm just saying that like I mean, Tar Khan's jokes that he wrote for Twitter or like that he writes every year are so much better than like what the hosts, say for their opening monologue jokes every year. Now Conan's better than I would say Conan's better than Jimmy Kimmel, in terms of, being an Oscar host. But I just think that, I never enjoy the monologues. I just because they're just okay, and I'm just kind of, and it's like the first like 10 to 15 minutes, I'm just like, just get to the first award.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm about to read out loud one of Tariq's jokes on Twitter. Nominated for Best Actress, Emma Stone in Begonia. What a performance. I mean, her reaction after being kidnapped and accused of being an alien. We haven't seen that kind of shock on her face since La La Land lost Best Picture to Moonlight.
Yes, I thought that that one was brilliant. My personal favorite is one that he wrote about, one battle after another, but also he tied it to some of Paul Thomas Anderson's past films. And this was my favorite. I thought this one was the best one. He said, "One Battle After Another is another of Paul Thomas Anderson's famously long films. There Will Be Blood was 158 minutes, Magnolia ran 188 minutes, and Boogie Nights measured, well, supposedly around 13 and a half inches."
Well, hey, if you and I are ever lucky enough to produce an Oscars telecast, we're having Tariq write all the jokes.
Yes, absolutely. It's just I agree with Tark. They need people who have seen all the movies and actually like can write good jokes, about the movies and the actors themselves. And it's just the jokes are just okay. That's just what they are. They're just okay.
And I agree with you that Conan O'Brien's opening sketch was clever, as it really felt reminiscent of what Billy Crystal would do in his stints.
Yes. And I remember that some people were tweeting after that happened, like, "Oh God, that would be so cruel if Amy Madigan lost after all of that." Yeah, no, I thought the opening bit was great. But I think after that, I think just the Conan O'Brien's jokes in general were just fine.
Well, what did you think of the joke regarding the Oscars' future move to YouTube in a few years?
That might have passed me. What was the joke again?
Well, okay, he was talking about how, the Oscars will be on YouTube in a few years, and he keeps getting interrupted by an ad from Jane Lynch.
Oh yes, that was funny. That was funny because I like Jane Lynch a lot. She's hilarious in general.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. And what did you think of Conan's Casablanca parody with Sterling K. Brown?
That was good. That actually was good.
Oh yeah, especially making fun of how, it was recently revealed how Netflix in their original content like to repeat the gist of the plot over and over again multiple times throughout their films.
Definitely.
As you alluded to earlier, the In Memoriam segment, which, if you ask me, is probably the most elaborate one I've ever seen at the Oscars. Starting with Billy Crystal paying tribute to Rob Reiner, to having alums from his films appear on stage, and then have Rachel McAdams say a few words in the middle, and then concluding with Barbara Streisand paying tribute to Robert Redford, followed by her singing the title song from The Way We Were.
Yes, I thought that that was a really, really cool way to handle it because we lost way too many legends this year for them just to be completely just like briefly shown and then moved on. Um have I think what was the line in Feud Betty and Joan? It was the last episode. It was during the in memoriam and I think it was like, Joan Crawford, like, you know, 50 years in the business, and all she got was, 2 seconds. and like and Bay Davis went like that's all any of us get. And so yeah, I think the fact that like for example, like the tributes to Robert Redford and Diane Keaton and Catherine O'Hara were more like they were more, and Rob Reiner of course were more like talked about. I thought was a really really good move, and it paid the necessary tribute that all of them deserved.
Oh, yes. And in fact, and who knows, maybe when the Oscars start airing on YouTube, we'll probably get longer tributes. Who knows?
Yes, and so I just hope that that works because they've made SAG on Netflix work in my opinion, but yeah, I mean I hope that that transition to YouTube is successful because I'm very apprehensive about that.
Well, hopefully, well, they'll at least be able to have, less restrictions than they would if they were on regular broadcast network, like performances of all five Best Song nominees.
Yeah, I mean the two performances that happened were really really good. But again, like I hate the idea that they only want to feature now like two. Like I think every song nominated should receive, a performance. Cuz what if, just what if, you know, a song that's not one of the two song performs wins? Then it makes the Academy producers look like jackasses.
Absolutely. And in fact, my friend Alex Meyer, he has this his philosophy every year. Look, either have all the songs perform or none of them. It doesn't make sense to only have a select few.
Yes. I also want to bring up about the original song presentation. It's been 2 years in a row now that we've gotten a surprise singer presenter that was not previously announced that he was going to be presenting. Last year we got Mick Jagger. This year we got Lionel Richie. So I think it's cool. But yeah, no, they've been doing like these, surprise presenters the past couple years. And I'm not talking about for Best Picture because a lot of times the Best Picture, like they keep the presenter for Best Picture a secret. But for example, original song was a surprise presenter 2 years in a row. And director was also a surprise presenters 2 years in a row because last year Tarantino was not announced that he was going to be there presenting. And same with this year, Robert Pattinson and Zendaya were surprise presenters. But I think it's really cool that like 2 years in a row we've had these surprise presenters not previously announced. And I think that it's cool. It's happened with original song 2 years in a row, and it's happened with director 2 years in a row, and I think that's kind of cool.
Well, yeah, in fact, who knows, maybe next year their surprise presenter for Best Original Song will be Madonna in honor of the 30th anniversary of her Evita song You Must Love Me win, which I'm sure Awards Watch editor-in-chief Eric Anderson would very much appreciate.
Oh yes, the biggest Madonna fan on the planet.
Yeah, so I do want to go over some bits with some of the presenters. Were there any that stand out to you? Because I've got a couple. First, I'll admit, Jimmy Kimmel presenting the documentary categories was pretty fun.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, Jimmy Kimmel is undoubtedly the most political late night talk show host that there is right now. Or maybe I should say maybe the most even more outspoken than say maybe Trevor Noah or Seth Meyers.
Or Stephen
Um,
Colbert.
or Stephen Colbert. Even I think Jimmy Kimmel's like the more like outspoken, like not afraid to like go to the extremes. So, but he was great. I loved the bridesmaids reunion. I thought that they were excellent. Um, I also I loved. I just knew because I was assuming at first that they were going to present the supporting categories like they did last year, where it's like they honored like each one individually, like the presenter honored each of them individually, and then opened the envelope like with no clips. I just knew I had a feeling that Kieran Culkin, if they had done that presentation, was going to really poke fun at Sean Penn. But when supporting actor happened, I mean, yes, you and I both correctly predicted that Sean was going to win, especially after BAFTA and SAG went his way. But yeah, I loved how Kieran Culkin, and this got a really funny reaction from my parents. Kieran Culkin's like, Sean Penn couldn't be here tonight or didn't want to be here tonight. My mom and dad were like, oh, like burn. But yeah, it turns out Sean Penn was is currently in Ukraine, so that's why he wasn't there.
Yes, and I
But I
also
thought,
thought,
but I thought Kieran was good. Although one of my friends thought he looked stoned out of his mind.
although something I thought about is that if the winner was Delroy Lindo, open front seeing Kieran Culkin presented to him because they were both in the Cider House rules.
Oh, speaking of which, Delroy Lindo looked absolutely pissed off when he lost. And I blame Clayton Davis and Variety for that because they were really, really pushing Delroy's gonna surprise. Delroy's gonna pull a Marcia Gay Harden. And that just was very, very unrealistic in my opinion. I knew Delroy Lindo would get votes, but it just when SAG and BAFTA went the same way, it's like, come on, like it's not really that much of a race. No, so Del Orlando's reaction was to remind me a little bit of Angela Bassett's reaction when she lost 3 years ago for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So
Another Ryan Coogler film.
yes, so I yeah, I mean, it's just we have to remember is that like these actors, like they are following the awards buzz and what people are saying about them. And I have no doubt, based on Delroy Lindo's reaction, that he was reading that a lot of people thought that he could pull it off a surprise. And when he didn't, he did not look happy. Although I did read a snippet. Clayton Davis did say that the room kind of didn't seem that thrilled that Sean Penn won. I think because Sean Penn is just not. I mean, yes, he's a respected veteran, but he's just not like the most likable guy. I mean, again, it's the work that matters.
Oh, yes, as Monique proved in her acceptance speech for Precious, it's about the performance and not the politics.
Exactly.
Yes. In fact, up to a point to what you made earlier, I remember hearing Paul Sheehan talk about in the Gold Derby Slugfest once how he's been on red carpets where the nominees are told, hey, guess what? You're out front to win. Only they end up staying in their seats all night long, doing some of the very best acting of their lives.
But that's what happened to Angela Bassett. I remember seeing people on the red carpet. It's like, we can't wait to see you up on that stage tonight. I'm like, oh my God, guys, that's like if it doesn't happen, like that's going to, they're gonna show that they're disappointed.
Yes, another presenter highlight I like to mention was Adrian Brody poking fun at his long acceptance speech from last year.
And he also poked fun at the fact, like he last year when he was on his way to stair up the stairs to accept the Oscar, he threw the gum in his mouth for his wife to catch. This time around, he was like, "I'll eat it this time."
Yeah, which also reminds me of how when he came back to present Best Actress the year after he first won, well, he did a little this, and as a nod to him passionately kissing Halle Berry when he won for The Pianist.
And I said to you, when you brought that up to me, I said it's a good thing that Keisha Castle Hughes didn't win because that would have been
Yeah,
very, very awkward. Like he sprayed his mouth with the fresh breath spray, obviously to, kiss the winner on the lips. But Keisha Castle Hughes, a person in her early teens, I think she was 13 at the time. But just still like very, very young. That would have been awkward.
yeah. Although I was kind of hoping he'd present Best Actress this year just to see how he would have embraced Jessie Buckley.
That would have been interesting. But yeah, no, I think I was kind of when Timothy Chalamet was looking like the front runner, I was kind of hoping that Adrian Brody was going to present it because you know they're alums from the same high school. They seem to they've worked together on the French Dispatch.
Hmm.
But I mean, obviously, with Timothy, as soon as he lost SAG and BAFTA, like I gave up that hope. But yeah, no, I think that would have been a kind of cool full circle moment.
Yeah, and I've heard people on Next Best Picture talk about, this might just end up being like what The Wolf of Wall Street was for DiCaprio or Dog Day Afternoon was for Pacino as roles where we look back, it's like the defining role that occurs, yet he somehow didn't win an Oscar and they go on to win for something they really loathe.
Yeah, that happens. I do think Timothy Chalamet will win an Oscar down the line, but I think that it's probably gonna be like 5 to 10 years before that happens. Maybe 10 to be honest.
Okay, so I guess to lift things up a little bit, what were some of your favorite wins of the night?
Well, I mentioned Amy Madigan, and that was one that was like not 100% guaranteed, but because it was a competitive race, and she was my favorite performance in the lineup, and she came out on top. I was very very excited, and like I almost was like, you know what, the rest of the night could not go my way, and I'm happy about this. Um, Obviously Jessie Buckley, I thought she absolutely deserved to win for that. Everything that Paul Thomas Anderson won. I mean, finally, Paul Thomas Anderson got his due from the Academy. I also what was another one I thought was a really good win. I think Sean Penn's win was good. I mean, I would rank personally. I would rank Stellan Skarsgård and Jacob Elordi over him of the lineup. I would have voted for Paul Mescal had he been nominated, but I think Sean's win is respectable. Michael B. Jordan's is fine. I've heard people say that his win's not going to age very well. I think it'll age okay. I don't think he's going to be a consensus pick like, oh, hands down, like a Robert De Niro Raging Bull type win. Um, I think some other wins. Oh, I loved One Battle winning for editing. I think the whole climactic sequence. I think was like, oh yeah, it should definitely win editing. Um, and aside from that, what were some other ones I thought were really good? Um, yeah, yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, Jesse Buckley, and Amy Madigan were the main ones I was like really really happy about.
Yeah, and I should remind you of when we did our predictions podcast for 2021. You and I were both, well, at that point, we're both settled on PTA getting his first win in original screenplay for Licorice Pizza. But then when WGA chimed in with Don't Look Up, the race became more fractured. And I was like, what? I'm settling on Belfast. Yeah, you stuck with Licorice Pizza. And well, I ended up being right. But hey, little did we know his next film would bring him 3 wins.
And I think it was worth the wait. I love like Licorice Pizza, but I think One Battle is a little bit of a better film, to be honest. So I do think it was worth the wait. I think what Paul Thomas Anderson's absolute best film is debatable, but I think that this was a great one for him to finally nab the gold.
Oh yeah, it's similar to what The Departed was for Martin Scorsese, Schindler's List was for Steven Spielberg, and Oppenheimer was for Christopher Nolan. You can argue whether or not it's his best work, but it's still a great one.
Definitely.
And as for me, I do agree with you on Jesse Buckley, especially as someone who personally has not didn't agree with the first 5 Best Actress winners of this decade. I'm no disrespect to them all. I just would have preferred someone else. So, well, I'm glad Sixth Time proved to be the charm. It was to me the performance of the year, and and I do like the wins for One Battle a lot, and I do like some of the wins for Sinners and. I mean, again, there was nothing that made me angry, even with Amy Madigan, even though I really didn't agree with that one, it was just like, oh, okay, whatever. I mean, I've seen worse ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, yeah, there was something that made me particularly angry. I mean, if I had to say like what's like the one win that like maybe like you didn't love as much as the others, I would say Michael B. Jordan, but it's still one that I'm like I could accept. I mean, there are a lot of people who are saying he's the worst of the lineup. I would probably say I would put him somewhere between three. I would put my rank my third, fourth, or fifth because Timothy Chalamet and DiCaprio are definitely my top two of the lineup. But it's one that's like what I understand. I mean there are like best actor wins like Roberto Benigni that I don't understand. Um, but this one's one I at least am like I get it, and I think
Well,
it's acceptable.
yeah, and yeah, in fact, of the best actor wins we've had this past decade, well, I'd certainly rank him above Will Smith, not to give the latter a slap in the face.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that just about does it for our recap of this year's Oscars. Thanks again for joining me tonight, Jack. This was great.
Oh, always a pleasure, Jeffrey.